What's up, everybody? Big Italy 42 here, talking about some DraftKings wide receiver options for Week 8 action for cash games and GPPs. If you watch the FanDuel podcast, you're going to see a couple overlap as far as popular plays. Obviously, we've got less games on the slate this week, a bunch of bye weeks. So these top two options, I'll kind of keep these short and sweet for you. Mike Evans at $8,100 against the Raiders. Raiders, obviously, one of the worst defensive units in football, have allowed the most passing yards of any team in the NFL. Evans has already sat out for his bye week, but is still 4 targets off of the NFL lead. So this is a guy who sees a ton of targets. He gets red zone looks, 6 touchdowns over 6 games so far. He's really the only reliable option in that passing attack, and this is a tremendous spot for him. So he's going to be a popular play. You certainly want to get yourself plenty of exposure to him, really across the board in GPPs as well. Julio Jones, no analysis really necessary for this one, especially with Antonio Brown being out and Roethlisberger being hurt anyway. Choice as Julio Jones to be the top option here at $9,600. Obviously, that price a little prohibitive, but there are plenty of values on DK, obviously with a much lower minimum salary than FanDuel. So it's a good spot for Julio Jones. Once again, highest total on the week, highest team total on the week. I expect the Falcons will keep it rolling against the Packers, who are 26th in the NFL against number 1 wide receivers. So Julio Jones, not a whole lot of analysis necessary there. Looking for GPP wide receivers, this is a guy I'm going to take a chance on once again. Inconsistent quarterback play from Ryan Fitzpatrick and Geno Smith, the small amount of time he was in before he blew out his knee. Brandon Marshall facing the Browns, who are 30th in the NFL against number 1 wide receivers. Obviously, this is a team that just allowed A.J. Green to go ham on them this week. So this is a spot where Brandon Marshall is the obvious top option in this passing attack. I mentioned Matt Forte as a GPP option as well. But, you know, this is Jets offense, and although they've been inconsistent, you're looking at guys like Eric Decker, who is out for the season, obviously, maybe be back for next year, significant injury for him. So Brandon Marshall is the guy. Quincy Enunwa had a big point total last week, but only a couple catches. So this really is the guy that you want if you're trying to target this passing attack. You got a Browns defense that is just terrible against the run. It's pretty terrible against the pass as well. And Joe Hayden didn't miss last week's game. He's looking at questionable here. So if he does suit up, maybe you bump down Marshall a little bit, but I think that's just going to bump down his ownership. I do think Fitzpatrick gives Marshall a good chance of having a big-time game here. And since Marshall has burned people a couple times recently, I think his ownership will be lower than it rightfully should be in this matchup. So he's the guy I'm certainly looking at here. Here's my deep GPP guy, DeAndre Hopkins for the Houston Texans, sitting at $7,400, facing off against the Lions. Lions 29th against number 1 wide receivers, dead last against the pass, according to Football Outsiders. And Brock Osweiler has been nothing short of terrible as of late. So this is a guy averaging just horrible numbers. I mean, 8 total touchdowns so far, 219 passing yards a game, coming off a game where he fumbled the ball 3 times, had just 131 passing yards. This guy has not been good. Bill O'Brien says he has not even considered benching him. I have no idea why, but let's hope that Brock Osweiler can get it going. And the one thing that he has been doing is targeting his number 1 receiver a ton of times. 27 targets over the last 2 weeks. Caught just 14 for 107. Long catch of just 12 in each game. So hasn't been much of a deep threat, but he's seeing a ton of looks. Osweiler and him really need to get on the same page. And this is the type of spot where you can kind of turn things around if you're Hopkins and Osweiler. So this is certainly a guy you don't want anywhere near your cash games. If you're only playing one GPP lineup, I certainly wouldn't be putting him in there either. But multiple lineups, he's the type of guy that can certainly pay off at some lower ownership and give you some big-time upside if Brock Osweiler can finally get things going here for the Houston Texans. So certainly some risk involved, but a tremendous matchup for DeAndre Hopkins in a spot where the Texans have a team total of just under 24 points. Value wide receivers, Davante Adams, $4,900. Kind of mentioned him a little bit as an alternative to Randall Cobb if he's unable to play or it will be limited this week. No indication that that's necessarily going to be the case here. So Adams, I still think, is a solid option at under 5K, even if Cobb is 100% go in this one. Highest total on the board in this game. You've got the Falcons ranked 29th against It's other wide receivers. I guess he's technically the number 3 wide receiver in this offense. But looking at the numbers last week, he looked like the number one target. This is the guy who saw 16 targets last week. Probably not going to see that number again this week or ever at all. Jordy Nelson just has not looked very good this year, not getting a whole lot of separation. So Aaron Rodgers relying on his young guys here, and at sub 5K price tag, I think Davante Adams is a solid cash game option and even a nice GPP option you can slot in there as well. Last guy up, Colt Beasley, $4,800 here. This is a guy that early in the year, mostly when Des Bryant wasn't playing, we were talking about him as a cash game option without much upside. Now over the past couple weeks, he started to show some upside. Over the past 3 games, though, just 14 targets. Obviously, this is a team that's looking to run the ball more, but he's caught 13 of those 14, 177 yards, 3 scores. Eagles rank number 1 in the NFL against the pass, according to Football Outsiders. And Beasley isn't the type of guy that's going to go out and score you, 25, 30 points, win you a GPP at this price. But he's certainly a guy that has a nice floor. He has double-digit DK points in every single game this year. And while he might not be a guy to crush value, if you're just looking for a safe option to get you 10 to 15 points, you hope he finds the end zone, I think that he makes for a solid alternative if you're not going to go the Cole Beasley route. But the Davante Adams route. But this is likely a week where I'm going to be spending up at wide receiver wherever I can. I think the values for me are going to come from running back, tight end, and quarterback. So thanks for hanging out with me here. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe and check out the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.